Alright, we're working on a 95 Miata with an '05 engine. We're doing crank and cam position sensors, so if you come here I'll show you where those are. Your cam position is on the back passenger side of the engine, literally right on top of that valve cover. There's your connector. If you come down to the bottom right, this right here is your crank position sensor, and the plug for that runs up right there.
Alright, first we're going to look at the crank position sensor here, and it is located on the driver's side of the engine bay, right on the crank dampener there. This particular sensor is a magneto-resistive style sensor, and how that works is it has a coil of wire that when current is ran through it, it creates a magnetic field. And on this dampener here, we can see a little notch, and as those notches pass that sensor, it alters that magnetic field, and it sends a signal to the PCM telling it where the crankshaft is located. So here we have the camshaft position sensor on the back of this motor here, and it is also a magneto-resistive sensor. So how it operates is it has that coil of wire down, and on the camshaft there's a notch that correlates with top dead center on the compression stroke of cylinder 1. So every time that specific piece of the camshaft passes this sensor, it sends a signal to the PCM letting it know where exactly cylinder 1 is in relation to the rest of the engine.
We're now running and set up on our picoscope. If you come here, we got our cam sensor hooked up, and all the way down there is our crank sensor hooked up. So if you come here, and you see it reading live right now, all the blue is that crank sensor. When that magnet, or those notches pass that magnet, that field expanding and collapsing, that's what we're reading here. And the same thing for the cam position sensor is red. Now the crank position sensor is reading where in the revolution it is. The cam is just reading where cylinder is at top dead center. Cylinder 1 is at top dead center of compression stroke. So you can see that there, and there. Oh, shoot, yeah. And then so with the change in engine speed, so does our graph change.
So here we can see a more in-depth look at the picoscope view while the engine is in idle. So like we said earlier, that blue mark, right, those blue marks are your crankshaft position signals. So that's going to do every 90 degrees of crankshaft rotation, there's a notch on the dampener that's going to interact with that magnetic field and cause that signal to go off. So each spike is 90 degrees of crankshaft rotation. Now for the camshaft, it's the red plateaus there, and that is every time cylinder 1 reaches top dead center of the compression stroke, there's a notch on that cam that's going to let you know where the camshaft is, and that tells the PCM and allows the PCM to figure out when to pulse injectors and when to fire spark plugs. So what we're looking at here is just a higher RPM on that picoscope. So as you can see, the frequency of the pattern becomes shorter and closer together because that engine is moving faster. So those notches on the crank and cam are interacting with those sensors quicker than they were at idle. So now looking at a wiring diagram view here, we can see the crankshaft and camshaft sensors down there in the bottom left-hand corner. And they're both 3-wire sensors because they are magneto-resistive sensors. And you can see that there are 2 wires from the middle on each sensor that go up into your PCM, and then 1 power and 1 ground wire.